Amelia stood at the threshold of her father's watch shop in Canterbury, the small brass key trembling in her hand. The windows were dusty, and behind them rows of clocks sat frozen in silence, their hands paused at different hours, as though time itself had been interrupted the moment Arthur Whitmore had drawn his last breath. The air was heavy with the scent of old oak and machine oil, familiar yet unsettling. She turned the key and stepped inside. The floorboards groaned under her weight, and the silence pressed against her ears. Every clock, from the grand mahogany case in the corner to the smallest carriage clock on the shelf, had stopped at the exact same second, 11 minutes past 3. Amelia's stomach tightened as she noticed the black drape her aunt had hung across the counter, a reminder of death in a place once alive with ticking. Her father had been a man of precision, devoted to the rhythm of gears and pendulums. He often told her that every clock carried a memory, a story of its owner's life. As a child she thought it no more than a quaint saying, but now, standing in the silence, she felt a strange weight pressing upon those words. Amelia walked deeper into the shop, her hand brushing the glass cases that held pocket watches, some engraved with names long forgotten. She stopped at the workbench where Arthur had last sat, tools scattered across the surface, and a half-opened watch resting as though waiting for him to return. Beside it lay an envelope with her name written in his careful handwriting. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. The letter inside was short, written in hurried strokes. It read, "Amelia, there are secrets you must guard. The clocks hold more than time. Trust no one. Begin with the drawer beneath the oak desk." Amelia's pulse quickened. She turned toward the oak desk in the back of the workshop. Its presence had always loomed over the room, carved with intricate patterns of vines and leaves. She crouched, pulling at the lowest drawer. At first it refused to budge, as though resisting her, but with a sharp tug it slid open. Inside was a velvet pouch, heavy in her hand. When she loosened the strings, a single pocket watch slid into her palm. Unlike the others, this one was black, its surface unmarked by name or inscription. She pressed the clasp and the lid sprang open. The hands were moving, yet not forward, but backwards. Amelia gasped as the air in the shop seemed to shift, and the faint echo of ticking filled the silence once more. The ticking that filled the workshop seemed to come only from the black pocket watch. Amelia held it tightly, her breath shallow, afraid it might vanish if she let go. Its hands continued to move backwards, steady and deliberate, as though unwinding time itself. She placed it back into the velvet pouch and tied the strings with trembling fingers. Forcing herself to breathe, she stepped out of the shop into the damp evening air of Canterbury. The cobbled streets glistened after a light rain, and the smell of wet stone lingered in the narrow lanes. The city was alive with voices and the clatter of carriage wheels, yet Amelia felt strangely apart from it all, as though she were walking in a dream. As she turned the corner into the alley behind the shop, she froze. A man stood there in the shadows, tall and motionless, his coat collar turned high against the cold. His face was obscured, but his eyes glinted beneath the brim of his hat. Amelia's heart skipped a beat. "Miss Whitmore," the man said softly, his voice carrying an unsettling calm. "The watch is not safe with you." Amelia's breath caught. "Who are you?" she whispered. The man stepped forward, boots echoing against the stones. "A friend to your father. Or at least, I was. He and I once shared a promise that binds us still. That watch you hold belongs to a different time, a different life. If you do not understand its power, it will consume you." Amelia's pulse hammered in her ears. She gripped the pouch inside her coat pocket. "My father left it to me. He wanted me to find it." The man's expression darkened. "Then he has condemned you to the same fate he suffered." Before she could speak, he reached into his coat and pulled out a pocket watch of his own. This one was silver, polished bright, and its ticking was loud enough for her to hear above the bustle of the street beyond. He held it open for a moment, then snapped it shut with a sharp click. The sound made every clock in the shop behind her tremble faintly, as if the building itself had heard the command. Amelia turned instinctively, but when she looked back, the alley was empty. The stranger was gone. She stood alone, clutching the black watch, her body trembling. In the distance, the cathedral bells tolled the hour. But as their echoes faded, Amelia realized with a shudder, the black watch in her pocket was no longer ticking backwards. It had stopped. The following morning, a thin veil of mist clung to the streets of Canterbury. Amelia awoke unsettled, the events of the night replaying vividly in her mind. The stranger's words echoed like a curse, the same fate he suffered. She pressed a hand against her coat where the black watch lay hidden. It was cold to the touch, lifeless, as though it had withdrawn into silence. She could not remain idle. Her father's letter had urged her to search, and she was determined to uncover the truth. With the pouch concealed in her handbag, Amelia made her way through the winding lanes toward the family townhouse on St. Martin's Hill. The Whitmore house had stood for generations, tall and austere, its stone facade veined with ivy. Inside, the air smelled faintly of lavender polish and something older, something musty, like memories sealed away. Her Aunt Margaret greeted her with a strained smile, her eyes flicking briefly to the bag Amelia clutched. "You should not spend so much time in that workshop," Margaret said in a low voice, as if the walls might hear. "Your father's affairs are complicated. Best leave them be." Amelia forced a polite nod but said nothing. She excused herself quickly and slipped into her father's old study, a room untouched since his passing. Dust lay thick upon the desk, and shelves sagged with ledgers, letters, and strange mechanical parts. She began to search, pulling open drawers and rifling through papers. At first there was nothing, only business accounts and sketches of clock mechanisms. But then, tucked behind a row of heavy books, she found a leather-bound journal. Her father's handwriting filled the pages in tight lines, the ink smudged by haste. One entry caught her eye. "The black watch is not a creation of mine, but an inheritance, older than this house, older than our name. It does not measure time, it governs it. Every bearer is bound, and none escape without a cost. Margaret suspects nothing. But William knows." Amelia's breath quickened. William. The name stirred unease. Her father's trusted apprentice, who had disappeared years ago without a word. Could it be the same man she had met in the alley? Her hands trembled as she turned another page. This one bore a drawing of the black watch, its face surrounded by strange markings she did not recognize. At the bottom, her father had scrawled a warning. "When the watch stops, it calls." Amelia froze. The words seemed to thrum in the air, heavy with dread. Slowly, almost unwillingly, she reached into her bag and drew out the velvet pouch. She opened it with care. The black watch lay still, its surface dark and cold. But as she stared, she saw faint scratches along its edge, symbols identical to those in her father's drawing. And then, so faint she thought she imagined it, came a sound. A single knock. It echoed through the study, though no one stood at the door. The knock reverberated through the study once more, louder this time, deliberate, as if a hand pressed against the very walls of the house. Amelia's skin prickled. She turned sharply towards the door, yet when she opened it, the corridor outside was empty. Her heart pounded as she closed it again, pressing her back to the wood. But before she could steady her breathing, another sound stirred within the room, the faintest creak of a floorboard behind her. She spun round. The study was unchanged, the desk and shelves still cloaked in dust. Yet the air felt denser, charged, as though she were no longer alone. Her gaze fell upon the black watch lying open on the desk. Its hands had begun to move again, backwards, faster than before. Suddenly the journal pages fluttered, though no wind stirred. One page tore loose, drifting to the ground. Amelia bent to pick it up, and her breath caught at the scrawled message in her father's hand. "If you hear the knock, do not answer. It seeks to enter." A chill seized her. She snatched up the watch and thrust it back into its pouch. At that moment the knocking came again, now from the window. The glass rattled as if pressed by unseen fingers. Amelia staggered back, her chair toppling over with a crash. "Aunt Margaret," she called, her voice breaking. Her aunt appeared in the doorway, startled. "What is it, child?" Amelia pointed to the window, but as Margaret crossed the room, the glass stood still, unmarked, untouched. "You are pale as a ghost," Margaret whispered. Her eyes lingered on the velvet pouch. "It has begun, has it not? Just as it did with your father." Amelia stiffened. "You knew?" Margaret's lips tightened, her hands wringing the folds of her dress. "I prayed you would never open that drawer. Once the watch chooses you, there is no undoing it. The knocking will follow you, Amelia. And worse, others will come." Before Amelia could demand more, the sound of the front door knocker boomed through the house, sharp and heavy, rattling the very walls. Margaret's face drained of color. "They are already here." The echo of the door knocker rolled through the house again, louder this time, each strike like a hammer against Amelia's chest. Margaret gripped her arm tightly. "Do not open it," her aunt whispered. "No matter how they call, do not answer." But the knocking grew relentless, shaking the brass fixtures in the hall. Amelia's blood chilled as a voice seeped through the wood, low and commanding. "Amelia Whitmore. You have something that belongs to us." Margaret's eyes widened with terror. She hurried Amelia back into the study, bolting the door behind them. "It is too soon." "I thought we had more time," she muttered, her hands trembling. Amelia's pulse raced. "Who are they? What do they want with the watch?" Margaret looked at her with despair. "The keepers. Men bound to the same curse as your father, men who believe the watch holds dominion over time itself. They will not rest until it is theirs." The pounding at the front door ceased abruptly. Silence fell, thick and suffocating. Then came a new sound, slow footsteps ascending the staircase, measured and heavy, each one closer than the last. Amelia clutched the velvet pouch to her chest. The journal lay open on the desk, its inked warning seeming to glare up at her. "When it calls, others follow." The footsteps stopped outside the study. A pause. Then a gentle knock against the locked door. "Amelia," the voice said softly now, almost coaxing. "You do not understand what you carry. Your father kept it from us, but you need not share his fate. Hand it over, and you will be spared." Amelia's throat tightened. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but Margaret shook her head sharply. "Do not listen," her aunt hissed. "They twist truth into chains." The handle turned slowly, rattling against the lock. Shadows shifted beneath the doorframe, long and reaching, as though stretching unnaturally into the room. And then, with a sound like splintering wood, the door began to give way. The wood splintered under the pressure, each crack of the door echoing like a gunshot. Amelia clung to the pouch against her chest, her breath shallow, her heart pounding like a trapped bird. Margaret seized a heavy candlestick from the mantel, her knuckles white as she raised it, ready to strike. The voice outside grew sharper, no longer coaxing but cold and insistent. "Give it to us, child. You do not know what you hold. Time bends for no one, unless commanded." With a final wrench, the lock gave way. The door burst inward, fragments scattering across the study floor. Two figures entered, men cloaked in long coats of deep grey, their faces half hidden beneath wide-brimmed hats. Their eyes gleamed unnaturally, catching the dim light like shards of glass. Amelia stumbled back until her shoulders struck the desk. Margaret swung the candlestick with desperate force, striking one of the men across the arm. He barely flinched. His gaze fixed solely on Amelia, or rather, on the pouch she guarded. "Stay back!" Amelia cried, though her voice trembled. The taller man stepped forward. You cannot keep it. The watch chooses, yes, but it does not belong to you. It belongs to the order. At his words, the black watch within the pouch stirred, ticking once, just once, but the sound rang through the room like a bell tolling doom. The men froze, their eyes widening. She has awakened it, the shorter one hissed. Before Amelia could move, the taller man lunged, his gloved hand reaching for her. In panic, she yanked the watch from the pouch and held it high. Its dark face caught the lamplight, the hands spinning wildly backwards in a blur. A sudden wind howled through the room, though the windows were shut. Papers tore from the desk, whirling like a storm. The two men staggered, shielding their faces, their hats ripped away by the unseen force. For the first time Amelia saw their skin, grey, brittle, like stone cracked by centuries. Margaret grasped Amelia's arm. The watch is defending itself. Hold on to it, whatever you do, don't let go. But the gale grew fiercer, rattling the shelves, toppling books, shaking the very walls of the house. And through the roar came a sound Amelia recognized with horror. The knocking. Not from the door this time, nor the window. It was coming from inside the house. The knocking spread through the house like a pulse, steady and deliberate, echoing from walls, floors, and ceilings. It no longer sounded like fists upon wood, it was deeper, as if the house itself were knocking back. Amelia clutched the black watch, its hands spinning faster than her eye could follow. The gale howled, rattling every pane of glass, while the two intruders shielded their faces, their stone-like skin cracking under the strain. Margaret shouted above the roar. It is not only defending, Amelia. It is calling. The words struck fear through her. Calling, to what? The study's mirror trembled violently, the silver backing rippling like water. From its depths came the faint outline of another figure, blurred but growing clearer with each second. A man's face pressed against the glass, hollow-eyed, his lips moving in silent speech. Amelia's knees weakened. She recognized him. Her father. Arthur Whitmore's image stared at her with desperate urgency. His mouth formed words she could not hear, but then his voice tore through the storm, unnatural, echoing from nowhere and everywhere at once. Amelia, run! The mirror cracked. Shards splintered outward, scattering across the room. From the fissures, darkness bled, thick as smoke, coiling like living tendrils. The knocking grew deafening, as if whatever lay within the house was forcing its way out. The intruders, though battered by the storm, straightened at once. Their eyes gleamed with hunger. The door is opening, one rasped. The watch has answered. Amelia stumbled back against Margaret. What door? What is happening? Her aunt's face was pale, lips trembling. The watch does not just measure time, it breaks its boundaries. That knocking, it is the past, demanding to return. Before Amelia could respond, the floor beneath them groaned, splitting in jagged lines. The smell of damp earth and cold stone rose, as though the foundations themselves had cracked open. From the darkness below, another knock thundered, closer, sharper, as if something beneath the floor was about to climb out. And then, through the fractured boards, a pale hand pushed upward. The pale hand clawed through the fractured boards, its fingers long and skeletal, nails scraping against the wood. Amelia screamed, stumbling backward as the rest of the figure began to rise. The floor gave way in jagged bursts. From the darkness below emerged a man, or what once had been one. His skin was colorless, stretched thin over bone, and his eyes were voids of black. He moved with dreadful purpose, dragging himself from the earth as though pulled by the knocking itself. Margaret pulled Amelia behind her. Do not look at him. Do not let his gaze meet yours. But Amelia could not look away. There was something hauntingly familiar in the man's ruined features, some echo of a portrait she had seen long ago in her father's study. Her breath caught. William. The intruders hissed in unison, their stone-skinned faces twitching with recognition. "He has crossed back," one whispered. "The apprentice returns." William's hollow eyes fixed on Amelia. His lips parted, his voice a rasp of stone dragged over stone. "Daughter of Arthur, the watch is your curse now." The gale intensified. The black watch in Amelia's hand burned cold, its backward spin slowing, as if William's presence had bound it. The house groaned under the weight of forces unseen, dust and plaster raining from the ceiling. Margaret gripped Amelia's shoulders, forcing her attention. "Listen to me, child. If William has returned, it means your father was right. The watch does not only guard time, it summons those lost to it." Amelia's heart thundered. Then he might be alive. Before Margaret could answer, William staggered forward, his skeletal frame cracking with every step. "Alive," he croaked. "No. Bound. As your father is bound. As you will be." He reached toward her, his fingers trembling inches from her face. The intruders surged closer, their voices rising in fevered unison. "Give her to us. She carries the watch. She will open the way fully." The mirror behind them shuddered again, light and shadow tearing across its cracked surface. From within, more faces pressed against the glass, hollow-eyed, their hands beating against the barrier in perfect rhythm with the knocking. And with each strike, the barrier weakened. The mirror splintered, webbed with cracks, each face pressing harder against the glass until bloodless hands forced their way through. The room shook as if the house itself were tearing apart. Amelia's grip on the black watch tightened. Its ticking had slowed to a single, thunderous beat, each strike like the toll of a cathedral bell. The air quivered with its power, dragging time itself taut, seconds stretching unbearably long. William staggered closer, his hollow eyes fixed on her. "It must end with you. The watch has chosen. If you resist, it will consume you as it did us." Margaret seized Amelia's wrist, desperation blazing in her eyes. "Do not listen. The watch has one truth, it binds, but it can also release. Your father searched his whole life for a way. He left the choice to you." The intruders lunged forward, shouting in fury, their grey skin cracking open under the storm's force. From the mirror, pale arms reached into the study, clawing for Amelia. The knocking became deafening, hammering from every wall, every corner, every heartbeat. Amelia's vision blurred. Her father's voice echoed through the chaos, a whisper threading into her ear. "Amelia, turn it back. Not to keep, but to break." Her trembling fingers gripped the crown of the watch. The hands spun backwards, faster, faster, until the numbers blurred into nothing. The gale shrieked, pulling at her hair, her clothes, her very breath. William roared, reaching for her. "No. You cannot undo it." But Amelia twisted harder, forcing the mechanism past its limits. The watch screamed in her hand, a sound not mechanical but alive. The cracked mirror shattered in a burst of light, the pale faces vanishing into dust. The intruders crumbled where they stood, their stone-like bodies collapsing into lifeless rubble. The knocking ceased. Silence slammed into the room like a sudden wave. William remained, his hollow form quivering. For the first time, his eyes flickered, not black, but a glimmer of the man he once was. He gave a faint, broken smile. Free, at last. His body disintegrated into ash, scattered by the dying wind. The watch fell silent. Its hands froze at midnight, and then the casing split, collapsing into pieces of dull, lifeless metal. Amelia sank to her knees, the fragments clattering from her palms. The study was in ruins, dust choking the air, shelves collapsed, the floor gaping with cracks. But the storm was gone. Margaret knelt beside her, pulling her close. "It is over," she whispered. "You have broken the chain." Amelia stared at the shattered remains of the watch. A part of her longed for her father's face to appear once more, But the silence remained unbroken. He had passed beyond reach. The night pressed in heavy and still. Outside, the first light of dawn crept across the sky. Amelia rose slowly, her body trembling, her heart hollow yet resolute. She looked to the ruins of the mirror, the splinters of glass that no longer whispered, no longer knocked. The watchmaker's shadow had ended. But in the silence of her soul, Amelia knew one truth: time never forgets.